and Greta, Hal from the Tempe pack and Greta now with the Flagstaff pack, sit Owen down and say, hey, would you like to train up some druids? And Owen says, fuck yeah. I said, right, so we know of werewolves around the world who have children from before they turned into werewolves, because once you become a werewolf, you can't procreate. Every month, the baby would die during the transformation from human to wolf. So, werewolves can't procreate, but there are some wolves around the world who had kids before they got bitten. And so they said, we can get some of them, transfer them out to the Flagstaff pack, and you can train up their kids as druids so that their kids get to be a part of this new paranormal, supernatural life. And then once they're bound to Gaia, there is no threat of them becoming werewolves, because Gaia's magic protects them from lycanthropy. So Owen says, okay, but I gotta get permission from Breed. It is at this point that Lukta of the Tuatha knocks on the door and brings to Owen a pair of brass knuckles, super awesome brass knuckles. I'm going to do a whole show about all these cool weapons that come about in the book series, and sort of describe these more in detail. Just suffice to say, they're really cool and a lot of fun. And then 3 enchanted stakes. Now, what these stakes do is they unbind a vampire as soon as they cut the skin. So instead of having to stake a vampire in the heart and cut their head off in order to destroy them, you just have to, punch them with this stake, and they'll turn into a pile of goo instantly. You can do it on the hand, in the chest, in the head, on the foot, whatever. As long as you pierce the skin, they will unbind. Which is very handy because Atticus is fighting vampires in Europe. So Owen says, groovy. I'll hand these out, because he's got all 3 stakes, and apparently they can't track down Atticus or Granuaile at this point in time. So Owen gets sidetracked on another little adventure, which I'll explain a little more in detail here in a bit. But after that side trip, he goes to Tir na Nog and says, hey Breed, I'm starting a druid's grove, gonna train up some apprentices. She goes, great, I will help you ward it as best I can. Off with you then. Go forth, we need more druids, that sort of thing. But after this appearance before Breed, Owen is confronted by a bog troll who says, dude, you owe me money. Because, back in the day, trolls would guard these bridges, and if you wanted to cross the bridge, you had to pay the troll a toll. That rhymed. And Owen's the kind of guy that's like, I'm not going to pay a fucking toll to cross a bridge. So he never paid a toll, and this troll never forgot. He got put on a time island, much like Owen, and so he has skipped about 2,000 years, but it feels like maybe a few minutes or a few seconds to him. So he fucking remembered. And he wants his money, and Owen doesn't have it, because gold, while still valuable, is not used in legal Tinder and modern currency. But earthly currency is not tradable in Tir na Nog either. So, what? But, he basically says, fuck off, and walks away. Goes back, starts training his apprentices. Well, in the middle of his first session with his apprentices, this troll shows up, looking for his money. They have it out. Owen sends the kids to safety, and he and the troll have it out. Owen wins, because it's Owen, But now he's left with this predicament of how did this troll get here? Because lesser fae can only come to Earth via old ways or if somebody helps them shift. So Owen's going, but Fand is in prison. Fand, the queen of the fairies, who's the only one that could theoretically, who could shift via trees, shift somebody via trees, or create an old way for trolls to use to come to Earth. Fand is the only one who could do that, or who would do that in Tir na nog. So this is not a very happy thought to him. So after recovering from his injuries during his troll fight, he goes out back to the wilderness to go see how the fuck this troll got there. Turns out somebody constructed an old way. Normally old ways are limited to Europe, the old country. But somebody constructed an old way in the Arizona wilderness. So now he's curious. So he goes back to Tir na nog to do some investigating. Goes to where Fand is being held prisoner and discovers that she has now been switched with a glamoured Selkie. Manon and McLear placed a glamour on this Selkie so that she looks like Flittish. Went to go visit Fand, supposedly. Guards let him through because it's Fand's husband and, on the surface, Fand's mother. But during the visit, he switched them out. Made Fand look like Flittish, made the Selkie look like Fand, and Fand was free. And so Owen starts trying to divine where Fand and Manon and McLear could be. Best he can figure out is they're living in a bog somewhere. In a swamp somewhere, I should say. But he's a little about all this. And so he goes back, but there's nothing he can realistically do about it. So he goes back to Tempe to start training his new apprentices some more. I mean, he informs Breed of what's going on. But ultimately, there's nothing more he can do. So he goes back to training his apprentices. At which point, after a while, Halk comes to visit and check on things and hand over some paperwork for Atticus. And they are attacked by a bunch of vampires and dun dun dun, dramatic reverb, Vernadrasha. Hal is killed during the fight. And the Tempe and Flagstaff pack agree that they want nothing to do with Atticus anymore. That if he comes back to their territory, they will hunt him and they will kill him. And Greta takes Owen aside and says, look, give Atticus the last of this paperwork, but it's like his last new ID. And he says, we're no longer going to represent him. We're no longer going to have anything to do with him. You can continue to keep in contact because that's your choice whether or not you want to be associated with this guy. I won't stop you and I won't hold it against you, but he needs to stay away from us. And Owen says, okay, but I don't know where he is. I don't know how to track him down. And Greta says, some shit's about to go down in Rome. That's probably where he is. And Owen says, okay, heads off to Rome. So, pause the story there. So, on with Atticus's adventures. Now, here's another detail that I left out. Kind of sort of important, but not really overall, which is why I forgot it. We find out in Shattered that Atticus's many assets that he's acquired over 2 millennia are not solely handled by Hal Halk. They are also handled by another lycanthrope named Kodiak Black. Instead of turning into a werewolf on a regular basis, he turns into a werebear on a regular basis. But he doesn't like to be called that. So, at the end of Shattered, our favorite arcane life leech, Werner Drasha, tracks down Kodiak Black, kills him, and takes over Atticus's remaining assets, which he was using to fund his war on vampires. So, best I can figure out from A Prelude to War is he has it out with Werner Drasha at some point in Ethiopia. Atticus tracks down or figures out, or whatever, that there is a written documentation of all the vampires in the world, their addresses and contact information. And he asks the assistance of a Tyromancer, whose name I cannot remember right now. But he asks her assistance, and I don't know what a Tyromancer is, but it's something to do with divining the future by making cheese. I don't know. But she helps him locate this. And it is in a safe deposit bank box in a bank in Toronto. Holy shit. Now, there's sort of this running joke in the series about Atticus doesn't like Toronto because he had a bad experience when he was living under the assumed name of Nigel Hargrave, I think, in Toronto, and he had a bad experience. So, but vampires trump bad memories. So Stake starts with Atticus breaking into this bank, finding the safe deposit box, and getting this notebook, all with the help of the Iron Elemental Ferris. After breaking into this bank and doing all this awesome druidic juju stuff, he stops at a Tim Hortons and gets some breakfast for him and Oberon and some coffee, and he runs into the Rabbi Yosef Bialik. If you'll recall, back in Hexed and Hammered, this rabbi showed up. He's a member of an organization called the Hammers of God that utilize Kabbalist sorcery, magic, power, whatever, in order to vanquish evils like vampires and witches and demons and shit. But over the intervening 12 years between the last time we saw him in Hammered and now, he's kind of calmed down. He got married, he's gotten old, and he sort of goes, you know what? Maybe not all paranormal activity is evil. There are a lot of belief systems in the world, and all of them encourage good to a certain degree. It is only when people misinterpret that and do evil shit that's when we should probably intervene. So they sort of come to an agreement and a peace and almost even, an alliance, because Atticus now has this notebook of, hey, here's all the vampires in the world. Can you call your Hammers of God buddies and kill some of them? And the rabbi says, sure. So they make an agreement about that, and they manage to, with the Hammers of God, manage to stake a bunch of vampires. And the next day, Atticus, with the help of a poltergeist, which was actually the reason that he had problems in Toronto, that was many, many moons ago, Atticus has it out with Werner Drasha. And with the help of Ferris, the Iron Elemental, manages to rob Werner of his life-leeching powers, because this Iron Elemental loves to eat magic. So Atticus manages to get Ferris to eat all the magic out of Werner's skull. He's got tattoos all over his head and his face that give him this ability to leech life and energy from people just by looking at them. Ferris robs him of this ability. Werner causes Atticus to be hospitalized, but also gets arrested by the Toronto police. So Atticus goes to the hospital. Now, this is the side adventure that I didn't tell you about in Owen's story. Owen, before Atticus is taken to the hospital, he texts how